going, everybody? Hope everybody had a good Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. But yeah, we're gonna be getting right into this freaking all this COVID science here that I've compiled for you guys. I've been compiling all this data for months now. As always, I'm Everett. I'm the host here at Cereal Spice Rack, and we got Harry.
Hello.
He's producing. He's going to be getting any comments that you guys have. If you guys have any questions, make sure to leave them on the live stream so Harry can get to them. Because I'll be going through all this, so I won't be able to see live what you guys are saying. So just send it to Harry. Harry will tell me what you guys are saying so I can address you guys.
Yes.
So, and then we have Matt on Discord. He's going to be chiming in every once in a while, just asking questions as well, so he can be clearing up some of the science for you. Since you guys, like I have a bachelor's degree in microbiology, so I might understand this a little bit better than, just people that haven't gone over this science for, the past, 5 years like I have. Because I've been reading and writing peer-reviewed studies for the last 10 years. I mean, you can go look up on Google, type in my name, Everett Heath, JDSO. I got a few papers in astronomy that have been published. I got a paper right now that's it's in the works. It's not a combination, but it's to see what the parasitic relationship between Rickettsia, a bacteria species, and a tick cell is. So I do have a lot of biology experience, especially microbiology experience. I'm not a virus expert, but we did go through a lot of virus teaching in over the course of my education. So I do know a fair amount here, and we're going to be going through all these lists. So I don't know if Matt's here, if he wanted to introduce himself real quick, but he's going to be chiming in. But yeah, let's get right into it. So we're going. First one that I want to show you guys, just to give you guys a fair thing of what this thing is. This is all pretty much common knowledge by this time, but this is just what the coronavirus is. It's a coronavirus. It's called that because it has a corona of proteins on it that are responsible for attaching to your cells and whatnot. And the reason why this has been so, such a big thing is because, so about the virus here. So let's go over a little bit of this. So so obviously the shape of a crown, corona name. They have a single-stranded positive sense, non-segmented RNA genome. So a basic virus. It's not a retrovirus that's going to be, like HIV or something that's going to stay with you forever. Because retroviruses, they insert themselves into your DNA, and retroviruses basically become part of you. Whereas the coronavirus, it's it's a cold virus. And I'm going to be making the argument that it is a cold virus. It's just very bad for the elderly. And my main thesis is that we really shouldn't be treating COVID-19 much differently than the way we treat, the seasonal flu as far as, us younger folk. Obviously, you guys are going to see the numbers here, that it's a lot worse for older people. And the comparison between this novel COVID-19 virus and the novel flu virus that came, the Spanish flu that came out back in 1918 and whatnot. So because that's the only rational comparison, well, not rational, but the only good comparison you can make is between two novel viruses. You can't compare the seasonal flu now to the COVID, because the seasonal flu, we've been dealing with it for hundreds of years, or not hundreds, but the last 100 years been, it's been mutating, but we've developed vaccines and all that, but I'll be getting into that more. So obviously
So hold on, question.
Yeah.
What's the difference between just regular virus and a retrovirus?
So retroviruses, it's kind of not relevant to this since it's not a retrovirus, but a retrovirus, as in something like AIDS, or not AIDS, but HIV, it gets into your cells and it grafts itself into your genome. So if you have a retrovirus like
it becomes
HIV or something, it's literally a part of your cells,
your DNA.
So, and that's why it's so hard to get rid of and whatnot, because doctors have a really hard time developing new treatments and whatnot, because that's pretty much all they can do is treat it. They can't actually fix the issue, because the issue is actually part of you. But this is not a retrovirus. This is just a regular. I don't even think it's an mRNA virus. It's just it's an RNA genome. So obviously what that'll do is it'll go in and hijack certain cells and start producing more of itself, and that's obviously what happens. So obviously it's let me just read this really quick. Sorry. So it has a very low case fatality rate in pediatric patients compared to patients beyond 80 years of age. So they say here that the case fatality rate, which isn't even the infected fatality rate that we'll be getting to, is 0%. So statistically, you're basically immune to getting it, and definitely immune to dying from it if you're, under the age of 12 and whatnot, children. So it goes from 0% for individuals, under 8, and goes up to about 21% for those above 80 years, which at 21%, that's pretty bad. But again, this is CFR, this is not IFR, because case fatality rate is how many cases there are reported divided by the total amount of deaths. Where'd my thing go? But basically, I mean, you guys know this, that 80% of the COVID infected are asymptomatic. So this is going to be a lot of people that don't know they have it. So they're going to be they're going to have the virus, and they're going to be passing it along without even knowing it. But as you can see from some of my science here, some of my following science, there's little to no transfer from asymptomatic people. So let's go over just a little COVID timeline graph here. Okay, so I want to show you guys just real quick here. So December 8th was the first day that the first patient developed symptoms of the Wuhan coronavirus. So this is the first patient that's documented having the coronavirus. So obviously this would have had to happen, like the virus had to have gotten out a couple days or weeks before that potentially, because there's no way to know exactly when the virus got out, but due to the person going in and being the first patient, that's when we can start our timeline basically, because that's the first confirmed infected patient. Not only in China, but as you guys will see from some later data, that the virus is also over here. So it wasn't just in China, because if we don't know about it and people are still traveling everywhere with how virulent this virus is, then we're not going to know. It's going to be spread like crazy. Like this coronavirus or this COVID, the reason it's so bad is that it's so virulent that it's very easily infects and can attach to your respiratory cells. So that's basically just what I wanted to show you guys, when it started and all that. So let's go to our next dashboard here. So this is the World Health Organization. It's the dashboard. So far, there's been 78 million confirmed cases in the world with about 1.7 million deaths. And this is going to be the case fatality rate, because these are all the confirmed cases. This isn't the total amount of cases, because these are just people that went in, they thought they were sick, they got tested, and these are confirmed 100% had COVID. So this is the case fatality rate, which right now, if you do the math, it's about 2%, which it's pretty high. The media would have you believe that it's somewhere between that 2% and around 10%, which is why everybody's freaking out so much. I mean, we can even go over to, the United States. I didn't do the math on this, but it's probably right around there at 3% for the case fatality rate. And that's just all, confirmed cases or deaths divided by confirmed cases. I'm not trying to downplay these deaths. It's obviously a very bad thing that we're having this many deaths in our country due to this virus. But most of these deaths are coming from, the elderly. As you guys will see in a later source, 95% of the deaths are above 50. So really it is an elderly disease. The people that are dying under 50 are usually immunocompromised or, have some other condition. So it's really something to look at here. Obviously, see we had a second wave or first wave, a little second wave, and then it's creeping back up, because obviously these are the sick months. It's December. This is when everybody gets sick. They get these respiratory disorders, symptoms like the flu, colds, all that. And this is just part of that. So again, I'm not trying to downplay these deaths, but it's just something to look at, because this isn't the number you should be using. You should be using the total infected case to get a percentage of how many people are actually dying from this thing, and how we should make policy based off of it. And I just want to show you guys a really crazy thing from from China that's just not, there's no way it's true, because it's just not how biology works. As you guys can see, like, their cases it was going up, it was spiking, and then it just kind of
Yeah, it's just
it kind of baseline. It flatlines. This isn't how biology or science work. We don't have. This doesn't happen. I've never seen this in any sort of biological study. This doesn't happen.
Well, clearly there's some government intervention.
There's government intervention, and they're like, look at this freaking, look at the death count here.
Oh yeah, just
or not death count, but like the weird outliers, and then there's just nothing. Like this right here shows you that China is doing some sketchy shit with, you know, their reporting of this virus and what's going on there. Because you know, we go to, let's check Mongolia. I'm assuming Mongolia is going to be similar. 0 deaths in Mongolia. Huh, I didn't look up that. Let's go to Russia.
Well, that's really strange.
Mongolia is strange. I should look that up earlier. I need to go do some research on Mongolia.
And then right next to Mongolia
is Russia, which, you know, their reporting is pretty good on this. Obviously, you can see they had a first wave. They're going into their second wave now, like we are. So this is the data. What you want your data to look like. You know, a nice smooth curve. And I'm just basically trying to point out the bullshit of China, because this doesn't happen. This doesn't happen in real life. So basically, just want to show you guys, you know, the WHO COVID dashboard. You know, gives you a lot of data here.
The WHO.
Yeah. So let's go to the next one. So, oh yeah, I showed you guys this already, but basically they found that COVID-19 symptoms are poor markers for COVID-19. The 76% of this random sample who tested positive reported no symptoms, and 86% reported none of those specific to COVID-19. So that means over 80% of people who have COVID-19 aren't even getting symptoms. So it's like if you have COVID-19 and you're not coughing, you're not sick, you don't feel differently at all, you know, you're a lot less likely to go in and get a test. And obviously, we've been doing a lot more tests now over the past, you know, since March. So people that aren't symptomatic are still going in to get those tests, and that can be shown with how the virus infected rate spiked right there around March. Because since the data will show it got here in December, so really we should have seen a slow, you know, gradual uptick of COVID cases. But since we weren't testing people back then, you know, there wasn't data to put out there. So,
but now there's so much data, and like, I wouldn't say over testing, but like there's just so much testing that was done that they're, you know, maybe some of the statistics seem, I don't know, how would you say, like not like false, like a certain percentage of them, you know.
Well, it's not false. It just shows that, you know, we really didn't have a good
like
idea of what was going on in the beginning of this, because it all started in December. So, and we'll just keep rolling on here. So this is a peer-reviewed study from Nature out of China. So take this with a grain of salt, because it's China data. So I wouldn't give too much credence to it, but it is peer-reviewed. So, and it got in Nature. So obviously there's some good science here. But basically, the discussion of it is basically that people who have gotten it before are very, or not people have gotten it before, but asymptomatic people are very not likely to actually spread the disease. So let me just go down to the discussion really quick here. So there, as you can see here, there were no asymptomatic positive cases in 96.4% of the residential community. So these are people who would have had it asymptomatically, and they're tracking these people that have it asymptomatically, but they're not spreading it, as you can see with this data. 96% of those people who were being tracked, they weren't spreading it. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt, but if you're asymptomatic, there's a lot less likely chance of you getting, or you spreading it. So it's basically the point with that one. So, and then we'll start getting the actual death rates here. So this is from the CDC. This is basically their their scenario preparedness. And obviously it says that, you know, this data is a little odd. You shouldn't be using it to, you know, to make arguments and whatnot. But they say that more based on scenarios 1 through 4, because these are hypothetical, but they do have a current best estimate with all of the data together. And so as you guys can see, it's pretty, like, I'll show you, or let me put up real quick here the flu, this one really quick here.
Death statistics?
Yeah, so this is death statistics to the flu. All I wanted to show you guys is that it's very similar. Most people are dying from the flu are old. Most people dying from COVID are old, and they have the you know, I'd say I think that's the infected fatality rate. Yeah, infected fatality ratio at about 5%. You have to do 2 decimal places over to get the percentage because these are just raw numbers. So 70 plus, it's 5.4%, which is pretty bad. So obviously that's not good. But for 50 to 69, this thing is 0.5%. Likely to kill you if you have it. So, and it goes down lower for that the younger you are. So anybody that's telling you that you you should be afraid of this as a younger person, they're bullshitting you because they don't know the science. And this is just the CDC too. Like, this isn't even my best data here. So let's keep going into it. Obviously we're gonna be saying lots of ums here, but so we'll get into a meta-analysis of all the COVID data around the world. So the main thing I wanted to show you guys here is that the IFR, which I was saying earlier, the infected fatality rate, all of the people who've ever had COVID, if they've been confirmed to have it or not, is around, or the average they found was 0.68%. And if we go back to the CDC estimate, the rate for 50 to 69-year-olds is the same, about 0.5%. So that's right around there in that thing. So the realm of data it's in is from anywhere from 0.5 to 0.8%. Obviously, some countries are worse on this. We've been doing pretty good. I'll show you guys the data on this right after this. But some places been not doing very good. Obviously, Slovenia is one of the worst places right now. It's been getting hit hard.
Slovenia.
Yeah. But basically showing you guys that the fatality rate, infected fatality rate is anywhere from 0.5 to 0.8%, which this is a novel virus, and we'll get into this later. But when the flu first hit us back in 1918, the IFR of it was anywhere from 5 to 10%. It was really fucking bad. It was affecting younger people. It was affecting older people. It's killing a lot of people. But I'll get into that later. So this is the data you should be looking at right here. That's all that matters here, is that the world infected fatality rate is anywhere from 0.5 to 0.8%. I'm not dismissing the deaths that happen from this, but if we're going to treat COVID like this, that has death rate like this, while other diseases have much higher rates, like the actual flu did 100 years ago, then it's not good policy that we're making, because as you guys can see, we'll just keep rolling through this data here. So we'll go to U.S. estimated infected fatality rate, and this guy, it was just a single dude. He put together all of this information. Is basically another meta-analysis, but based on counties in the U.S. And he found that the IFR in the U.S. was estimated to be 1.3%. So county-specific rates varied from 0.5% to 3.6%. So, and obviously we'll go down to limitations here, because he acknowledges the same thing that I have. So he says, I acknowledge that my estimate of the IFRS would be higher than the true overall IFR, and this is because my model relied on identified cases that are presumably all symptomatic patients with COVID-19. So even that 1.3% number that he put out is most likely a lot lower, because he's basing this data off of symptomatic individuals. And obviously, we've been testing non-symptomatic or asymptomatic people a lot more. But, the data that this guy found and his limitations show that it's not something.
And this guy's just a scientist, just doing his personal research.
Just scientist. Yeah, these are called meta-analysis data. It's not. He didn't do any research himself other than look up a whole, not statistics. We'll go down to his references. Like, he puts together all of these references. It's a case study basically on all these different peer-reviewed studies, and he puts them all together to give you this base rate
analysis.
So that's the number he was looking for, but obviously it's a lot lower than that. It's probably more around the 0.5 to 0.8% that I was showing you guys on the last source. But yeah, anyways, we're gonna keep going through this. So here's one that actually goes against my argument. So these guys, they did a study, and they make the argument that there are findings. So this is what they say: the estimated airfare is close to zero for younger adults, but rises exponentially with age. Obviously, you guys can see the stats. It gets higher and higher as you get older. That's what I've showed you guys. But their discussion, they say that our findings indicate that COVID-19 is not just dangerous for the elderly and infirm, but also for healthy middle-aged adults. So what do they base this data on? I'll show you. They base it on accident data here. So I didn't go through this whole thing, but they base their argument on how dangerous COVID is to how dangerous accidents are for younger people. So I'll just go here. And I'll show you right now. They have flawed data. I don't know where they got their data from, but it's flawed. I'm sorry, guys. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Okay, so here's the data we need to look at here. So they say the automobile accident annualized fatality rate for, anywhere from 0 to, 74 is 0.01%. I don't know where they got that data because I went and did my own research on all this. And we'll pull that up right now. We'll go to the actual accident statistics from the Highway and Safety Administration.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is we're just gonna do a little quick. I already did the math on this. You guys can go do the math on this. But so let's just take 2018, 33,000 people died from accidents with a total crashes around 6.7 million. So fatalities, obviously that correlates with COVID deaths, and the total crashes that correlates with everybody that's been infected with COVID. So you do that math, it comes out to 0.5%. I don't know where they're getting this data from because they say 0.01%.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Because as you guys saw in the previous data, it was about a 0.5% IFR for those ages, from 50 to 69, I believe, and that's the same amount as people dying from accidents. So you can make the same exact argument that you do for accidents as you do for COVID right now because they're the same exact rate. I really don't know what this study hasn't been published yet. It's in medarvix.org. It's a site that people upload their studies to before they get peer reviewed. So I don't obviously somebody's going to check this data because their data does not work out. I mean, it literally took me 10 minutes to go and find the actual, it actually took me an hour to find this data. It was kind of hard to find the raw data on this, but their percentages are all off. It's not right. The percentage should be 0.5%. This is just, I don't know if they're using UK data or China data, but US data shows that you have an automobile accident annualized fatality rate of 0.5%. So, and this is what they're basing their argument on of how policy should be affecting not just older people, but younger people as well. So it's bullshit. And you all can see it's bullshit. You go do the math, it's bullshit. So that's probably why it hasn't been published yet. I imagine they're going to get them on that. But anyways, we'll keep on going. The main point of that one was to show, if you're all about, making these mass COVID restrictions, you're basing it on something that has the same death rate as accidents here. So what are we going to do, ban cars? That would have the same exact effect as, doing all these lockdowns and locking people in their houses. So, and even that case, that wouldn't stop all viruses because viruses, it's obviously a lot different than a car crash. This virus is so virulent, it spreads very fast, especially with the new mutation in the UK. They say that mutation is 50% more virulent than the previous strain. But the good thing about that is that they've found that the vaccine that we've developed is effective against a bunch of different mutations of this thing. So really, it's not much to worry about. Obviously, it's going to spread a lot faster, so that's why we have to worry about it. But as far as it being more dangerous to people, it's not. It's just a little bit more virulent. But anyways, let's keep going here. So we did the accident statistics. So we'll do a quick thing here. So this is the peer-reviewed study that proves that this COVID's been here since December. So basically, it's first identified in Wuhan in China in December 2019. It spread worldwide really fast since it's so virulent. So basically, okay, it's not very long, but they found that almost 106, where is it? Yeah, right here. 106 out of 7,300 samples from December 15th through January 15th were positive for COVID. So basically, this COVID has been here since December. This proves it right here. And as you can see in the further sources we have, it doesn't make any sense to the excess death that we're seeing now, because it's not. I don't think it's correlated. But basically, what I want to get at is from these tests, we had about a 1% infection rate here in the U.S. I'd say by the end of January. So I did the math on that. What was it again? Yeah, so it was about 1.4% were infected, and then so 15%. That's not right. So, and then we'll go to April. So that was December. We'll go back to April. So in April they found that almost, let's see here. So almost 4.65% of people in Los Angeles tested positive for COVID antibodies. So if you test positive for COVID antibody, that means you either have it at the time or you had it before. So this is like it's like a total number of all the people who have had it to, that had it before to now. So it just shows you the increase in rate that we're going. Went from about 1% to about 4.6%. So when I did the math for this nationwide, obviously it was a little quick math. It's not the most reliable data, but basically I went 4.65%. That would be 15 million Americans, and I used data from the WHO about 2 weeks after that date, which is the normal rate for people dying from this thing. It takes about 2 weeks. So, and what I found was it was about 45,000 divided by 15 million, which comes out to 0.3%, which goes right along with all that previous data that we've seen. It's a little bit lower than obviously the 0.5 to 0.8%, but statistically wise, it's right there in the set of data that we're looking at. So the main thing of this is a crazy amount of people got infected with this thing by April, and by what these guys found, their raw data is like, what was it, like 8,000 people out of 380,000 people or something. I don't want to spend too long, but basically that's what they found. It's about 4.6% back in April. So I don't know what it is now. I've been trying to find more data on it, but I'd imagine if it rose about 3% from December to April, and it's now December this year, it's probably at least at 10% that have either had the disease or come into contact with it. I suspect it's a lot higher than that, because just the virulence of this disease, how fast it spreads and whatnot. But basically, a lot of people got this freaking thing. So, which drives down the infected fatality rate,
like,
obviously.
Was 4.65% of all the people that they've tested in Los Angeles so far? Right?
This was back in April. So yeah, they did a subset of people, and they found that 4.6% of them had COVID antibodies.
I wonder what the percentage is now.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. I'm thinking it's because it's an exponential graph. It's like, it's not a linear graph. It's an exponential. So if it went up 3% in those 3 months, then it probably went up another 20%. I'd say this is just my opinion, but I think that probably half of us Americans have probably already had this thing by now, just because of how, I keep saying this, but how virulent this thing is.
Yeah.
Like, if you go back to that first source we used, they explain why this thing is so virulent. Its proteins are a lot more likely to attach to your cells than other things were, and it comes with being, some of the virus itself, obviously it causes a lot of problems for old people, and that's why, it's really bad, because it's so virulent. It runs its way through elder populations, and they're the worst, they're the most likely to die from this thing. So we really need to be protecting the elderly is the main point here.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm going to get to with this whole thing. So let's just keep on rolling here. So okay, there was a thing that I wanted to bring up. If I open it for you guys, then we would get zucked. It's an Insta ban on Facebook to bring up this, and the only reason they do that is because they said it was misinformation. It's not misinformation. It's just kind of flawed data, I'd say, because the doctor that did the analysis of this data, she went back and looked at total percentages of deaths by age in the United States from year to year, and she found that there has been no significant change in the percentages of demographics that have died based on age, which is, it's definitely something to look at, but it's not the whole picture, because you're basing it off of demographic percentages rather than the actual people who have died from this thing, like I have showed you guys. So it's not misinformation. It's data you have to include in in a more meta-analysis like I'm doing now to connect the dots with everything. So, but what with that said is that basically there has been no demographic changes of total death here from year to year, even this year. And so the most damning thing. So this is the source that just made me sick. It just made me completely like just lose all hope for humanity. So if you guys have seen what I've led you guys through, COVID got here in December. And it's very virulent. It's very deadly for older people. So let's go to the earliest. Let's actually go to the latest date that it would have been here, which is what, January 20th. I'd say it's a little bit earlier, but you would expect, and let me explain this here. This is weekly number of deaths from all causes year to year. It goes from 2017. We had a spike over there in 2018. Obviously, you can see it goes up every time winter comes around because people are likely to get more sick. They're more likely to die, from flu, cold, all these different things because there's a lot of different factors. But basically, this is the kicker right here: is that if you would expect the death rate from COVID to be consistent, then you would see a slow rise from these dates right here. But you don't. You actually see a decrease until what date? What date does it start rising? March 28th. When did lockdown start in the U.S.? March 12th. How long does it take for COVID to kill somebody? 2 weeks. So this right here, they locked people in their houses and let them die. This is just, it's wrong because if they weren't locked down, we would have seen, it probably would have followed the graph here.
It probably would have, it was consistent.
And obviously, correlation does not prove causation, but this is some damning evidence right here that deaths started to spike right after lockdowns. Yeah. If you had expected, the death rate to be so bad as it is, as we've shown you guys from COVID, you would see the deaths start to spike here. And what do I contribute these to? Obviously, it's COVID deaths, but it's a lot of suicide and depression. You have all these people on the edge of life, and you close, when lockdowns happen, you close bars, you close movie theaters, you closed everything. Restaurants that made people, happy to live. And you have a lot of people that are on the edge of fucking killing themselves. And it's sick that these people just, they think that all these lockdowns are doing more help than good. But it's not true. It's really not true. Because you say what you will, but the death rate spiked after lockdowns. It's just the most sick data. Obviously, I think the death rate's still high because we're still under lockdowns. I mean, California, obviously we've had some of the strictest lockdowns and we've seen some of the most deaths from COVID. So it's like we're not even addressing the issue.
Yeah.
And
being under lockdown part 2 is just I feel like going out today, like the day after Christmas. Literally, it seemed like the day after Christmas on a normal day in downtown. Just everybody's just wearing masks instead.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why aren't any of these businesses open? Like, fuck. Like, they could be getting so much business, but nobody's allowed to dine in. I don't know.
But anyways, we'll be discussing more of the philosophy and why lockdowns are so bad on the next episode. I just really wanted to show you guys the science and the raw data here because I'll just make this clear for you. If COVID was causing these deaths, we'd see a gradual exponential rise here, but we see a decrease. So there's something fucked up going on here. I'm going to say that. I don't care if I cuss, dude. This is fucked up. It's fucked up because people are dying because of these lockdowns. But anyways, we'll keep rolling on here. Just to show you guys, you shouldn't be afraid of this thing as long as you're younger. If you're under 50, there's no reason you should be treating this differently than the flu. So here's some damning evidence right here. So all these people saying that you're prone to get reinfected again, they're bullshitting you, as I've said before. So let's read this really quick. Within 19 days after symptom onset, 100% of patients tested positive for antiviral immunoglobulins. That means they're immune to the virus. Now, after 19 days, obviously, it takes time for the virus to mutate and change, so those antibodies won't be as effective. But let me show you the next thing we have, because it's even more damning. 19 days, we're at 6 months now. And this is another source from MedRx. This is pretty recent. This happened, what's the date on this? Yeah, November 19th, 2020, so it's still in the peer review process. But they found that so they basically say that what was the one thing I wanted to say here? But they say that it's very unlikely for you to get this thing again if you've had it before. And we'll look at the raw data here. You guys can go look up these sources. but you have 3 people who tested positive after testing positive before in the past out of 1,200 people, and that like the percentage like that shows you that most people that have had it before, their antibodies are still working after 6 months. That's simply all it is. If you've had COVID and you got it, this data right here will show you that you're very, very almost statistically impossible to get it again. So if you've had COVID already, don't be scared of getting it again because the data shows otherwise. But anyways, we'll keep going here. Do we got any commentary?
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet?
No.
Okay. So I'm just trying to get through this fast for you guys because this is just the science part. We'll do more discussion on the next episode. I just didn't want to make this too long. So we'll go into the worst states for coronavirus. Obviously, the main thing I wanted to bring up here is California, since we've had the strictest lockdowns of the country, and we're at the top of the thing. So obviously, you can make the argument that people aren't complying, but based on the data here, like, you can go to other countries, or not countries, but states like, Tennessee, Arizona, as you guys can see here, South Dakota, where people aren't wearing masks. They're still going in. They're still having dine-in. Like, literally everything's open. There's nothing has been changed, especially South Dakota. And like South Dakota's not even on these top 5 here, basically. But showing you that lockdowns in America, I can't make an argument for other places because, like New Zealand and China, they did some really strict and honestly fucked up lockdowns. But we don't do that here in America because we are free men and women here in America. We make our own decisions for our own lives. Yeah. And we aren't peasants, we aren't serfs, we aren't slaves. We make our own decisions. We aren't going to be locked in our house for months, okay? We make our own decisions here. And that's why lockdowns aren't going to work here, because of this American spirit. I might sound like a fucking, old conservative bat here, but it's true. Like, we have the spirit of freedom here, and you're not going to lock people in their houses, and you're not going to make them do things that they don't want to do. I mean, you guys have seen all the videos of people freaking out when people tell them what to do about this whole thing. It's causing so much drama and such a mess.
Yeah. And
it's not helping anything. And as you guys can see here, California's at the top of the list. We've had the strictest lockdown. So what is that supposed to tell you? Yeah. We shouldn't be in this lockdown.
Lockdowns have definitely stirred up the pot for like everybody. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like they've helped the riots happen. Mm-hmm.
So I bet you, if anything, if we didn't have lockdowns, it would be a lot lower than this. And obviously, people can make the argument that it wouldn't, because lockdowns are helping people. But you get these lockdown people and you make them congregate in small households. Mm-hmm. They're more likely to get it. I mean, there was a statistic that I was reading the other day. I don't have it in the sources here, but it was about only 2% of COVID people getting infected with COVID came from eating out and dining out indoors in restaurants. I think they found, I can't remember the exact stat, but they found that at least 80% of people are getting this in their own home from people going out and coming back in with it. So if you don't want to get this thing, just stay in your house. Don't force the rest of us to stay in our houses, because that's not how America works. We don't force people under threat of violence to do things here. That's why our ancestors came here. It's what we're still doing today. And obviously, we had a lot of problems. America isn't perfect, but this is who we are. We aren't slaves. We're not serfs, and we're not fucking peasants. We do what free men and women do. So that's just my argument. Lockdowns aren't going to work here in America.
It's funny, what is Florida one of the freest non-lockdown?
Yeah, it's not even. Florida's not even here. Florida's it's open as shit. Obviously, you guys can see, Florida's still pretty bad. They're all in the red. There's a lot of states here that are pretty bad. Yeah. I think Oregon, Washington, they're not bad because they got hit really early with it. So, yeah, that's basically just showing you guys that the state with the strictest lockdowns, we're doing the worst percentage-wise for COVID. So something's not working. And then, okay, so this is a really good comparison that I wanted to show you guys. So I wanted to compare South Dakota and North Dakota, their COVID rates and their death rates, basically, because they're very similar populations. They have very similar demographics. They have very similar population numbers. I think I already said that. But yeah, let's check it out really quick, just so I can show you guys. So COVID cases. So South Dakota, North Dakota, because these two states have taken two completely different routes in dealing with their COVID situation. So COVID cases. Okay, so just to give you guys a quick little intro. Oh no. Oh no, I'm sorry guys. We gotta disable ad block really quick. No. So bad. Okay. So anyways, so North Dakota, they enact statewide mask mandates, business restrictions, they had travel restrictions, basically the whole gambit, and that went into effect November 14th. I think they've had a mask mandate since March or April or something. So they've been a lot differently because if you guys can hear, the governor of South Dakota, Kristi Noem, she hasn't done shit. She hasn't done a single thing to, as far as lockdown goes. She hasn't closed businesses. She hasn't restricted people from traveling, and she hasn't issued a mask mandate. And just go look at the raw data here and just, compare how similar these two graphs are. And you can see here, South Dakota, about 96,000 cases. North Dakota has 91,000 cases. You do a statistical analysis on this, there's not going to be much difference in that. So, because if you had an effective lockdown procedure and policies, you'd expect North Dakota to be much lower on the case rate and much lower on the death rate. But as you guys can see, I'm telling you right now, you run a statistical analysis on these two numbers, there's not going to be that much of a significant difference. And you would want to see that significant difference as evidence for lockdowns working. So, but basically that's it for South Dakota versus North Dakota, just because I think it's the best example to compare a lockdown state with a non-lockdown state and how their results are. And it just shows you that lockdowns aren't doing anything because these populations are so similar. Obviously, correlation doesn't equal causation, but I think this proves a pretty strong case for my point. And we'll keep going on here. So we're going to get into some flu statistics now, just so I can compare this to the flu. So let's go into the CDC statistics really quick here. I want to show you guys the graph here.
Oh, wow.
So here, the green is 2020. Obviously, you guys can see some spikes here from visits for influenza-like illnesses. And obviously, back in December, COVID would have been considered one of those influenza-like illnesses because it attacks your respiratory system. I mean, I never got tested for COVID, but I'm pretty sure I had it back in January, and it felt like a flu. I mean, I could have had the flu. But as far as most people say, it's very similar to the symptoms that you get from the flu. So that's why you see a big spike here and people going to the emergency room for that. Or not emergency room, but just percentage of visits. And another spike here, and you can see 2020 is really weird because you have these spikes and they go back up and you have sheer drop-offs, whereas the other years they're basically, you come up and then you go down. Like this blue year is the only other really weird one that had a steep drop-off here, and that was 2017, 2018. Steep come up, steep drop-off. That was kind of odd. But anyways, just to show you that most of the other years they follow a bell-shaped curve, and it's a W-shaped curve. It's not a bell shape because it comes up, goes down, comes up, goes down. So obviously these were probably most likely people who had COVID going into the hospital thinking they had the flu. As you can see, right here at about week 12, and this is when testing started to just go off the walls for COVID. It does a steep drop off. So if we didn't have those mass testings, then I think this number would have stayed high because people would have they would have just thought they had the flu because it has a lot of the similar symptoms. Okay, so that's all I want to show you guys on that one though. So, and then, so another thing is a lot of people are talking about the long-term effects of COVID-19, and, if you're a young person and you get it, you're going to have these long-term effects with, your heart, your lungs, all these other things. So there's no data on this yet. I'll just tell you that right now. This is the best data we have on it right now. It's from the JAMA Network. So they even say, granted, that no long-term data of substantial numbers of patients with various presenting symptoms exist, and with comparison groups, it's still early in the COVID-19 pandemic. It's possible large numbers of patients will experience long-term sequelae, but they don't have any long-term data on it. We do have long-term data on the flu, and I'll show you guys that right after this. But basically, where they're getting this data from is from self-reported surveys. So they did a COVID symptom study over in the UK, US, UK, and Sweden, and all of these are basically people self-surveying what they're feeling after they've had COVID. So it's science, but basically self-surveys are the lowest form of evidence. So it's really something to take a grain of salt with. But with all that said, I do think COVID-19 can and probably does cause some long-term effects. But we'll go over to it right now. So
it's only been like what, 9 months.
So the main ones have been cardiovascular issues, pulmonary issues, and neurological issues. And we'll go to long-term effects of the flu because they're a lot worse. I'm just going to tell you guys right now. I'm not going to go over this whole thing. It's a huge freaking paper. But basically, long-term effects of the flu can range from cardiac issues, neurologic issues, ocular issues, renal problems, musculoskeletal issues, hepatic problems, hematological problems, and endocrine problems. Like, these have all been documented as fact. This is what the study's all about, is that they found the long-term effects of the flu. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, it looks a lot worse than the long-term effects of COVID. So anybody that's making you all scared and fearful that you're going to get long-term effects from having COVID, they're wrong, and they're bullshitting you, and they're just trying to make you afraid, because the flu has the exact same, if not worse, complications. So we already went over this influenza mortality rate. Obviously, the only thing to show here is that most of the people dying from the flu are older. That's all there really is on that one. Another one here from the AARP, 95% of Americans killed by COVID-19 were 50 or older. So it's just obvious. This is based on a study that came out. Yeah, CDC COVID actually data.
Yeah, it's even published on AARP, dog.
So
fucking, they're probably reading that shit at hometown.
Yeah, so most of these young people that died, they obviously probably had immunological disorders.
Yeah.
Or, they're compromised. And again, for the thousandth time, I'm not diminishing their deaths, but we have to we have to treat diseases similarly. And if the rates are similar for COVID than they are to the flu, then we have to treat the flu or COVID similarly to the flu. And we don't lock down the economy every year because of the flu. We don't do that.
Or for strep throat.
Yeah, exactly.
I got that this year. That sucked.
But I mean, in terms of a very widespread disease that infects a lot of people.
I know.
Staph is Steph's a little bit more lower on the list.
I know, but it sucked.
It doesn't kill as many people.
I was sick for 4 weeks.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah.
Not good. So, and then we'll go to age distribution of the. I didn't want to say too much on this one. Basically, I just wanted to get to their conclusions on this study, showing that actually it's in their abstract here that so this. People make the argument that influenza is said to shift mortality to younger age groups, but that's based off of hearsay. That's not based on any data. And these guys went through, they did analyses, and they found that there's no shift in mortality to younger populations that have happened because of the flu since that first outbreak in 1918. So this is for the people making the argument that that COVID's going to mutate and it's going to start killing younger people at a much higher rate. They're wrong based on the science. Don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. And I posted all these studies so you guys can use the same exact stuff that we're using here. But basically, that's all I wanted to show on that one. Oh no, I closed that one out too quick. Okay, so and then just to show you guys how bad the flu actually was when it first came out. The novel flu virus H1N1 that started infecting people in 1918. That's what you compare to the novel coronavirus, because you can't compare, like I was saying, you can't compare the seasonal flu that we've been dealing with for 100 years now, that we've had vaccines for decades, that we've been building up antibodies to, because some of the earlier sources that I gave you guys, it shows that the rate of people dying from the flu has come down so much because we've developed all of these antibodies and vaccines in our body. So you're a lot less likely to die from the flu today than you were back then, because it's not a novel virus anymore. It's something we've been dealing with for literally 100 years, and it still kills tens of thousands of people. Now, I'm going to be really surprised if we're still dealing with the COVID virus here in 2 years, killing a lot of people just because of with the virus or the vaccine that we have. I'm going to say, let's give an estimate here. We're probably going to see 10 to 20,000 deaths next year, and it'll keep coming down from that due to the vaccine and due to all that antibody evidence that I showed you guys earlier. That is really, it's really telling on how, you're not likely to get COVID again after you've gotten it once, and you're not likely to spread it even if you're asymptomatic. But basically, just want to show you guys this quick stat from history.com that they say a suspected 500 million people worldwide were had the virus or the influenza virus, and an estimated 20 million to 50 million people died from the flu. So that's a infected fatality rate of anywhere from 5 to 10%, which is horrible. And the bad thing about the novel flu when it came out is that it was killing a lot of young people too. It wasn't just older people. It's the same exact argument they're trying to make now for COVID, but as you guys have seen from all the science that I've showed you, they're bullshitting you because the flu is so much fucking worse. Obviously our medical, all of our medical prowess and our information data that we had back then was a lot less than we have today, but this is what you have to compare. You have to compare novel virus to novel virus. You cannot compare a seasonal flu to a novel virus. And I make this statement based on the science. The flu is worse than COVID.
Yes.
Based on the science. It's only because we've been dealing with it for 100 years. It makes it seem like it's less than we think. But basically, that's everything that I had for you guys. There was just, as far as the science goes, I wanted to give you guys one more thing because this is the Great Barrington Declaration from infectious disease epidemiologists. I'd say I'm not an expert, but these people are. If you don't want to listen to me and the argument that I've set up today, then go listen to these people. These are experts, and what they say that as infectious disease epidemiologists and public health scientists, we have grave concerns about the damaging physical and mental health impacts of the prevailing COVID-19 policies, as in lockdowns, and recommend an approach we call focused protection, which would be protecting the older, letting younger people live their lives. And you have people on here like, Sunetra Gupta, professor at Oxford University, Martin Koldroff. I've looked up a few of these guys. They're legit. Professor of clinical microbiology, Errol Munitz. Another microbiologist, David Livermore. So if you don't listen to me on this, listen to all these people. Look at all these established scientists that came to the same exact conclusion as me. And my conclusion is that we shouldn't be treating this virus, as I said in the beginning, much differently than how we do the flu, at least with younger people. We should definitely be trying to protect. We should be definitely wearing masks. We should be trying to socially distance. But as far as lockdowns go, they're causing a lot more harm than they are help in this case. So, and that's really what I've tried to rail against today. COVID-19 is real, but it's so much less than what the media and politicians, the elites, they're trying to make it out to be. And all of these scientists agree. So, I mean, come to your own conclusion. You guys can look up all of the science that we had on here today. Like I said, if you don't want to listen to me, go look up some of these guys' opinions on it because they have a lot more information and are a lot more experienced than I am on the issue. So, I mean, and just being with myself, having my background, I was able to, go through all the science and actually show you guys what it's actually about. There's, first of all, the death rate is very low. Second of all, you're very almost impossible to get it again. Well, not impossible, but statistically impossible to get it again if you've already had it because of antibodies. And lockdowns don't work. Those have been my 3 main points, and I hope you guys have really taken a lot out of this because make no mistake, this is the human rights crisis of our generation. We have to do everything we can to stop this evil power transfer, this wealth transfer that's going on, because make no mistake, that's what it is. It's a wealth transfer and power transfer from the poorer classes and the less powerful classes to the upper classes and the elites. That's what all this is about. It's not about a dangerous disease, even though it is pretty dangerous. It's about control. That's what it is. I mean, and that's my opinion, but I hope you guys can make the same, conclusion that I have based on all the data. And that's basically it. Did you have anything to say, Matt, or did you have anything else to say, Harry?
Basically, it's like kind of common sense at this point for me now to understand that if you can't see that small businesses can't operate, and I've seen multiple in my hometown and even here in SLO that have just closed down permanently. and you see Walmart and Target open and Burger King and shit. They're always gonna be open. They got millions of dollars. Mom and pop shop maybe got 20 grand in savings, just floating, you know. And lockdown, you know, made it so they're not existing anymore.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you see big in other states other than California, we have drive-in shows happening right now. So there's big like music, what do you say, like big companies that are able to do these big events and things with socially distanced events with cars and you being in your own little square section, while someone like me being a personal business music promoter, I can't really do anything being on a small platform, you know. So it just hurts the little guy in the end. That's what I was trying to say.
But anyways, that's actually going to be our next episode. We're not done with COVID yet, guys. We got a lot more to say. As you guys say, these were just the science sources. I had to actually split this episode up into two because I had all this science that I wanted to go through. That's basically just me monologuing. And then we have a whole range of discussion topics that we're going to go over next week, probably 2 weeks here, or within the next 2 weeks. We're going to go over all of the philosophical ramifications of, you know, the lockdowns and whatnot, and, you know, we'll have a little bit of science in there, but I basically just wanted to have this episode separate so that I could lay out the science for you guys in a clear and concise manner. But anyways, that's going to be next week. We're going to be discussing all of the problems with lockdowns, all of the nasty things that have happened since they've been implemented. It's some nasty stuff. I will let you guys know, especially in China and New Zealand. So anyways, that's it for today. This has been the Cerebral Spice Rack. I hope you guys learned something. And
you're signing off.
Yeah, we will sign off. See you guys next week. Keep it spicy.
Yep.